There are those who chose to leave home, and then there's those who must. A journalist in Caracas, he has a camera as a witness and his typing as his voice. One day the sun comes up, the coffee's hot. Next, something changes. The street changes. The air changes. A man goes to work. Then come the protest, the crowd, the chaos. He sees things. He takes pictures. He writes things down, and then suddenly the photos and the writing becomes something else, something dangerous. In Venezuela, he'd been a man with a story to tell, but now he became the story. The moment when documenting something became about surviving. The comfortable life cracks, the ground shifts, he looks around and wonders, life or not life? That's the only question left. He chose life. He left. For him, the journey across borders wasn't about opportunity, it was about staying alive. Sometimes a man doesn't cross a border, sometimes a border crosses him. This is not a story of opportunity. This is a story of a man who looked inside the dark and walked away. This is the story of Angel Matute. This podcast is dedicated to bringing stories about people migrating and moving to other places and sharing their experiences. I thought it was appropriate to start this podcast given the opportunities I've had of meeting people from all over the world and introducing. I would love to introduce people that I've come across that have amazing stories and incredible stories. And given the political situation, both in the US and in other countries, and how things are shifting, I'd like to bring you voices and faces that will give you a different perspective on what you might think your understanding is of what immigration and populations and migrations and all that's about. So today I would like to introduce a great guy. His name is Angel. He is from Venezuela. I think my camera is a little off right now, but
Yeah, a little
Angel.
bit is lagging.
Yeah, let me change my camera. It's fine. Um, ah,
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna come back. But yeah, thank you for having me, Carlos. I'm very happy to be here with you. As one of your first guests for this podcast. So yeah, there's a lot of people that needs you know stories and statement and people's journeys to follow and get inspired sometime and get some advices as well. So yeah, looking forward for this conversation today.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, look, I'm having technical issues with my camera, but what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to start with a couple of questions, and maybe while I'm fixing this, you can give us a little bit about your background, right? So, um, where were you born? Just details about like where you come from, the city, like your family. Like describe where you come from, so we can get an idea, a little bit of a better idea of where you're from.
Right, absolutely. Well, I was born and raised in Venezuela. I'm from one of the suburbs around Caracas. It's called Los Teques. It's part of the metropolitan area of the Caracas, which is the capital of the country. So, grew up in these suburbs, and I went to college there. I mean, for high school and elementary school, and then when I started college, I moved to Caracas, to the capital, and pretty much living there and growing up back there in Venezuela was a very different situation that what people may hear right now about the Venezuelan crisis and the Venezuelan situation in general, with politics and economic collapse. So growing up was different. We live in democracy, and every 5 years the president change. We have a booming oil industry by then, and I grew up in I honestly in a privileged family. I went to private school my entire life. I went to private college when I went to high school education. So my life growing up was always uh, taken care by my parents. Always has a roof. We always had food on the table. But for the last 20 years, Venezuela entered into a different situation that made a lot of people, left the country, and it's because you start, seeing the change in the country and the economy, in your household, and you start, uh, wondering about the future. You see the collapse of the country, and I left Venezuela back in 2015. So this year, 2025, is almost 10 years since I left. So 1 decade, which is a lot, And in 10 years, I miss a lot of stuff in my country. So, and now it's even worse for the people that is still there. And the immigration crisis is every single day is probably worse than ever. So, when I left, I want what's one of the guys that were, or the people that could leave because they have someone outside, because they have some, savings maybe. But right now, people is just leaving the country by foot, walking from Venezuela to United States, walking from Venezuela to Chile, to Peru, to many places, which is crazy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like you had would you characterize your upbringing as sort of stable, and then over the years
Yeah,
changing, I guess, just deteriorating or getting worse as time progresses based
yeah,
on the.
you start seeing it, yeah, your family, maybe, your family around is struggling with, bills, and, putting food on the table. Maybe it wasn't my case directly, but my family was affected, you know mm, probably earlier than us, right? So my dad is a doctor. He has his private, you know, practice. My mom pretty much worked with him his entire life. She does like esthetician, stuff like eyelashes, facials. So they build their business pretty much. So, I was told that way. You have to, try to be an entrepreneur, try to develop your career skills, and, to not be dependent on a job. But, the circumstances were different. I like to say I had a, upbringing. It was stable, and career wise was stable as
Mhm.
well for me. I started working when I was very, very young, and as an intern in one of the biggest radio stations in Venezuela. I then started working. It was 2010. I was, maybe by the fourth term in my career in communication. So I started working as a blogger, pretty much.
Mhm.
Website was kind of the new thing by then. So the radio was trying to, get off the radio and getting online as well, trying to stream the radio, trying to do some articles and blogging about what happened during, the programming of the day. So of the station. So that's what I did at first. And then I became a producer, and then I went into digital marketing, and that took me out of Venezuela eventually, working in marketing as a independent creative. And but I fear persecution in my country. I left because of being incarcerated and accused of terrorism. So, it's a journey of up and down, trying to be resilient pretty much many times, and also understanding that what I had in the past is not, my reality anymore. And maybe I don't have that, the stability that I used to have when I was growing up. So yeah, that's part of the immigration life. That's part of the learnings, I guess.
Okay. So may I ask you what, I guess, not just what prompted, but when was the moment that you realized that, you know what, I have to leave Venezuela right now? Like, when did you make that decision? Like, what made you make, because that's a tough decision. I don't imagine someone just wakes up and decides to take off. I imagine you probably knew about the US and other countries, but at the end of the day, you still have to leave everything. All right. So what was that
Yeah,
moment that
yeah.
clarified it for you?
You put your life into. bags, two luggage, two 25, I mean, 250 pounds bags, those two bags that the airline pretty much allow you to take with you. So it is a tough decision. It's very hard. You are leaving not only your family, but, you know, your flavors and your music and your friends and your places, the colors of the city. It is a lot. You don't realize at the moment, but as the years goes by, you kind of get to the realization that yeah, everything just changed from the weather to
Right.
the people around you.
Mm.
So what happened in my case was back in 2014, by February 12th, during a manifestation. I was working for the radio as a reporter, and I was into this big manifestation that was happening in Caracas. It was El Día de la Juventud, which is February 12th, and things were out of control pretty quickly after the finalization of the manifestation, or the demonstration that was called by Leopoldo Lopez, which is one of the most prominent, opposition leaders in Venezuela, and the actual leader, which is Maria Corina Machado, who is being persecuted as we speak. And they were the promoter of this demonstration that day, and we kind of delivered a document to the ministry, and then one of the government branches of it was the judiciary, I remember. And then after that, riots start, and people engage in violence with the police. The police start firing at us, which is a human rights violation. They shouldn't be carrying guns during pacific manifestations, right? So it was a very chaotic day, and I fear for my life. I heard the bullets going through pretty close, to my ears. I saw a guy that was killed like maybe 10 feet from me. So it was, very crazy day. Eventually, around that area, all the police came in, and I was also hostage, kind of, by the Bolivarian militia, which is a kind of a branch of the government. They engage in politics and engage in kind of illegal activities sometimes, and they harass people, who are not with the government, and that they did that to me. So I kind of went into hiding in one building, and the military eventually came in and took us from there. But they put us, on jail. I was detained, and I was accused of terrorism. I was accused of, conspiration, a, a lot of charges that were just, lies. So they put me in jail for like 3 days, the worst 3 days of my life, to be honest with you. And, when I was in that little small cell with 20 people, where the conditions were the worst ever, sanitary speaking, it was and on the walls, blood, all kind of fluids, garbage. There was no bathroom, so people have to use bottles to, you know, uh, relieve themselves. So they keep all this bottle inside of this cell. So it was a very, very nasty place and very bad situation. So and I was blackout. I didn't have any communication with the world. I didn't know what was happening outside, and I also knew how the Maduro government is with this kind of um, prisoners and detained people. I like to say I was one of the first wave with this is state, like uh, how do you say it in English? Is estado? How you can translate that
I would say
into
state exactly as you said. Yeah.
yeah, state, and they do this, to scare people, and they accuse you of crimes that you didn't commit just because you were out there, uh, protesting or elevating your raising your voice against injustice stuff. So they try to you know put people in terror, so they are scared of getting out or going to a demonstration again. So as a journalist, they put me one limitation that I couldn't go to public manifestation, public demonstration of any kind, which is also a human right violation. They violate my right to work as a journalist. They violate my right to freedom of speech, to go there and raise my voice against whatever I want. So for me, it was very obvious that I have to leave. So that's what I did. That was early 2014, and I just ended up my last semester at the university by then. So I have to wait for all my documentation, right? All my diplomas to go to the register, and then go to the foreign branch of the government to get certification, so my studies will be valid in a different place, different countries, right? So that's what I did for like maybe 10 months to a year, planning my exit, and then I went to Mexico. In, it was late 20, 2015,
Let's
yes,
see.
October 2015.
Okay, so
September 20.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Um,
Yeah, no, no, no.
no,
No
so
worries. It was
so
September.
I guess your intention wasn't necessarily to go to any specific country, or did you have a specific like goal in mind, like where to go eventually, or did you say I'm going to stop? I'm leaving to any particular country just to start. Did you have any idea?
Well, I need an emergency relief to my situation, and I have a half brother who live in Mexico. My dad went to college in Mexico when he was attending med school. So he went to live in Guadalajara back in the 60s or whatever. So he got married then, the first time. So I have a half brother who is Mexican.
Okay.
So for me was like I reached out. I mean, I grew up with him. We have a relationship, right? It wasn't the most close relationship with all my siblings, but the relationship exists. So I reached out and I said, well, you already know what happened to me, and I'm trying to get out of Venezuela. One of my initial thought is going to Mexico, right? I have one family member there. That's you, pretty much. So he was down. He was like, yeah, sure, come here. I will try to, help you out. We reached out to some lawyers in Mexico, and eventually I was able to get a job offer. So with a job offer, you go to the embassy. So I went to the embassy in Venezuela, to the Mexican embassy, and asked for pretty much a work visa, which was valid for 1 year. So yeah, that's how I came to
I
Mexico
see.
back in 2015. So you know, I went to stay with my brother for like 2 to 3 weeks, and then I moved to Mexico City and I spent another month there, looking for a job. My savings were kind of low, so eventually got an offer in Guadalajara, and I moved to from Mexico City to Guadalajara, and I lived from October 2015 to September 2018 in Guadalajara, Mexico. So,
Okay. So how was that?
but I mean, I already knew that I want to live in the United States, but by that time I didn't have the resources to do it.
Sure.
Immigration lawyers are
Hmm.
expensive. They charge you thousands of dollars to take care of your case. Settle down in the United States as well is expensive here. Um, they have new programs right now. They are providing shelter to people that is crossing the border and stuff like that. But that never was part of my plan. I never wanted to ask for anything from anyone of any government, neither Venezuela, Mexican government, or the American government. So I work on my plan, and I was saving money for a few years, and by then I worked for a company that is an American transnational. So I start traveling with them from Mexico to Los Angeles, and I fall in love with the city, and eventually I just took a gamble.
Okay. So how was that transition for you going? I mean, I know you told me in a nutshell how long you were in Mexico, but how was that experience going from Venezuela to Mexico? I know you had your brother, and then you said eventually you moved to Guadalajara, but was that very? I mean, obviously, it must have been hard for you leaving everything. But aside from that, was it difficult to settle in and to like assimilate to Mexican culture and to where you were, or did you
Well,
feel completely different? How was that experience for you?
Mexican people is very welcoming. We are very, warm, and I felt, immediately at home. To be honest with you, my half brother have another half brother, and he kind of, greet me when I got to Guadalajara, and he introduced me to his friends by then, and I started working in a small marketing agency, and it was a, yeah, I don't know, maybe 15 people, and they were very welcoming with me, as well. My first, I moved to Guadalajara on, I don't know, Saturday, and I started working on Monday. And on Monday, one of the guys took me out for lunch. I was the new guy, and he took me out to get some tacos and torta ahogada, which was, kind of a Guadalajara thing. So my experience in Mexico was beautiful, to be honest with you.
Okay,
Uh, and I got to, when I got to Guadalajara, my dad lived there. His former wife also lived there, and that was the home where I got to stay for 2 months.
oh
So,
wow,
which is crazy. So, so Mexico was very welcoming, and I kind of feel like it was easy to me to, get involved with the culture. I already know the culture because of my dad and my half brother, right? But it was a little bit more easy, to go through that transition, even though Guadalajara is the second biggest city in Mexico. Still, very traditional, very conservative. You don't see as many, foreigners as in Mexico City, for
right.
example. So I was kind of the only foreigner around, pretty much, which was weird sometimes. People, was like, what is that accent coming from? Oh no, where are you from? What are you doing here? It was like, funny at first, but then, you know, I have still having great friends from Mexico. So
But that's great. Yeah.
it was
No,
amazing.
but it's
Yeah.
good. So it sounds like at least as a start off point, Mexico was a good platform for you to sort of continue on your path. And
Right.
let me how did
But I must say, this was 10 years ago, right? Right now it's a very different situation. A lot of Venezuela have, entered the Mexican territory on foot, on their journey to come to America, and that has created a problem to Mexico as well. And you start feeling some, you know, comments, or people start saying, "Oh, these Venezuelan people is just messing around," and blah blah blah. So maybe the perception of the Venezuelan have changed a little
I
bit.
see. So it sounds
Yeah,
like there's a sort of based on the number of people that have arrived in Mexico, it sounds like there's a sort of I don't know resentment or there's some sort of friction or I guess a
yeah.
negative perspective about the Venezuelan migrants or immigrants is starting to change. Maybe
Also,
not in the
also in
positive way,
America, that changed
right?
as well. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That changed as well in America, and you see it with the President Trump. He is speaking about Venezuelan gangs and Venezuelan migrants doing crimes and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I had heard that about a lot of Venezuelan people's struggles in other countries like Colombia and Panama as well. That they there was some friction
Yeah,
there,
we had
which is interesting
Peru.
to me
Yeah,
because it's like you never think people, as Americans we usually think that everybody comes to our country first, right? Like we're always the
right.
first choice, and that's not necessarily the case. Some people just want to go, want to stay
It
close
was.
to their country, right? And maybe
Yeah,
their
and
destination is just right next door. That's a better option for them.
actually, Venezuela was their destination for many years during the 60s and 70s and 80s. We have 6 million of Colombians living in Venezuela. We have few Chileans living in Venezuela. They, get away from dictatorships and stuff like that. They settled down in Venezuela. Isabel Allende lived in Venezuela after her family was, persecuted in Chile. So many people used to turn back to Venezuela because it was this, amazing economy in Latin America. It was booming. The Venezuelan people was welcoming. It was easy to emigrate. So yeah, we have a lot of immigrants from all kind of, Latin American country, from Peru, from Chile, from everywhere. And now we are the problem, around,
Right.
which is crazy.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's very interesting how history shifts perspective on people or in countries. I do remember in like the early 90s I had a very different view of Venezuela as it is now, just because I remember being able to watch programs in the US um from Venezuela, like comedy shows and stuff like that that were broadcasted into Spanish channels in the
Yeah.
United States. And it was interesting. I was like, wow, it seems like such a cool place. And then I remember the whole thing with Chavez and everything that transpired after that. And from then to now, even my own perspective on the country has changed. Um,
Yeah.
topic of another
Absolutely.
story, but anyway, I want to really focus on your immigration
Yeah, we need
process.
a different episode for
Yeah,
that.
for sure, and we can.
It's very long.
I would absolutely love to have that conversation with you. But given that we're talking about your experiences through this, sorry, your immigration process from Venezuela to Mexico, and then I guess my next question is, how did that transition come about? Like, how did you decide? Even though my life is, I guess it seemed like you had a decent life in Mexico. What you said you had
Yeah,
traveled to Los Angeles, but what was the catalyst for you to say, you know what, the U.S., let's go? Like, what made you make that decision?
well, I always wanted to live here. That was something I always, envisioned. Yeah, I always want to live in New York City. It was my, dream, and I want to go to film school there or photography school there. But coming to LA, I found many, many similarities with Caracas. It's a city which is covered by big mountains and it's close to the
Mm-hmm.
ocean. And you can go hike and you can go to the beach, and you have a weather which is, pretty stable. So that for me was game changing. You have a severe weather which is very bad pretty much all seasons. So it's like I started watching LA like, oh, maybe I was wrong about my destination, because this feel like and mixing of New York with Barcelona plus Caracas. It's like art plus entertainment, fine dining, sports, concert, snowboarding, surf, skating. It was like, yeah, this is me, growing up. This is my childhood. I wanted to be a surfer in California. So it was like, yeah, no, forget about New York. We are moving to LA,
Yeah,
and that was my gamble. Yeah,
it's really is, even me growing up in Los Angeles, like, as you know, right now I'm in France, and I've actually lived in other places. I've lived in Japan, I've spent a lot of time in China, even in Mexico, and LA, man, it sucks you back, man. It really does.
yeah. It's like sometimes I think about leaving LA, and then it's like, why?
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
for?
I mean, considering,
Where to? It's like, oh man, that's
yeah,
hard. That's a
yeah.
hard
I mean,
decision.
considering
Yeah.
considering everything that's going on, that's unfortunate with the fires and all of that. At the end of the day, I mean, if you really decide to, settle in Los Angeles, there's just so many things you can do and so many types of people you can meet. The variety of cultures, the blend is amazing. And I'm talking about even
Yeah.
people
That's
from
what
the
I
US that come from other states. They bring a different perspective as well. So and they blend with people from places like Mexico, like Venezuela, from so many countries. And it has its charms. Obviously, like every city, we have our problems, and sometimes they're amplified in the media.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
at the end of the day, it's home. And if like you said, you like to do a variety of things and be outdoors, then LA is a very viable place for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the place to
for
be.
sure.
And then I'm, also wanting to breaking into filming so bad for many years. That is, this is the place to keep pushing, keep writing, keep improving that English skill so I can, write better scripts.
Sure, sure,
So
sure.
yeah.
So let me ask you, What was the process for you coming to the U.S.? Like, how did you? What was your immigration process like? And then I want to move into how you felt when you arrived. So let's just start with like the day you decided this is it. I'm staying. Like, how did that? How was
Well,
like?
it was a very, it was. I already knew when I was moving out, and my visa was about to expire in Mexico. I never had any stable, immigration situation there. So it was like I have this case of a human right violation with the Venezuelan government, and I, you know, came here. I took a flight from LA. I mean, from Guadalajara to LA, October 2020, no, October 2018. And yes, I came with my dog, my little dog and me. And it was lucky because one of my childhood friends from Venezuela was moving to LA at the same time. He was coming to LA to attend English school.
Mm,
So he was looking for an apartment at the same time I was looking for an apartment. So it was like, perfect timing. It's a friend, someone I know from 20 years ago. Um, we were both, getting started. So he called me. I was in Mexico still. And he told me like, oh, look, I have this an apartment here, and he showed me the video. I'm still living there, and he showed me a video and everything. And he was like, well, this is the rent. We have to split the amount, in half. And I say, yeah, I'm down. If you can sign, I will give you the money the very first day I got there. And it was like that. He actually picked me up from LAX. And I have for that night, I booked a Airbnb. I went to this Airbnb in like South LA. And I was kind of scared, but it was exciting at the same time. Then the very next day, they gave us the key of this apartment, and we went to Walmart. We bought two air mattresses, two plates, two cups, two forks, two knife. Like his pair and my pair of stuff, and that was it. That was the beginning. And as a journalist, as a writer, a creator, I went out and started meeting with lawyers to start my immigration case. And they were reluctant with the idea that I spent a few years in Mexico, even when I wasn't, a permanent resident. They were like, oh, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. Or the one they say, oh, yeah, I can help you, give me $10,000. And I was like, that's a lot of money. So I don't have that money. So I did a lot of research. I went to a lot of NGOs, non-government organizations, to request help, ask questions, and I get my case together by myself. I am a pro se applicant, so I pretty much represented myself with all my statement. I did a very long statement about what happened to me. I gathered all the evidence I could have from the detention day, human rights reports where my name was, as a detained or persecuted journalist. So I gathered all the evidence I could. I submit my case, and eventually I got an interview and I represent myself. It was a crazy thing to do, but it's one of the most, one of the things that I'm the proudest, to be honest,
yeah, I was about to
because
say you have to feel pretty proud of
yeah,
yourself for that.
yeah, I spent like 3 months. I didn't have a computer by then, so I went to the library, to the public library in downtown LA, and I started typing down my statement. And I called my former English teacher in Mexico, and I told her like, "Hey, look, I need your help. I need you to translate this to me." Because that was one of the things I was stuck. They say like, "Oh, you need translation for all this thing,"
Hmm.
and I reached out to translation agency, and it was a lot of documents, and they were like, oh yeah, give me $3,000 for the translation. But no.
Right, right, right,
Like,
right.
I don't have that money. I mean, the resources I have by then, it was just to keep a roof on my head, put food on the table, until I kind of settle down and start working, which I didn't know when it was to you know
So let
so
me sort of
yeah.
reiterate what you said. So did you fly in on a tourist visa, or how did that, when you flew in, or how?
when I flew in, yeah, I have a tourist visa.
So
Yes,
okay, so
so I
did you do your? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What I was going to ask was, so you flew in as a tourist, and then you, I guess you applied. Your intention was to like overstay the visa and apply for your asylum while you were here. That was more or less the
well, you
intention.
don't have to overstay. You can request asylum at at the airport if you
Ah,
want.
okay. Did you do that
You can do it.
when you arrived initially, or?
No, no, because I mean there are different ways to do it. When you do it like that, it's like a affirmative asylum, and when you do it the other way, it's like defensive asylum,
I
something like
see.
that. So sometimes they send you to immigration court. Sometimes they interview you through a different process. So, yeah, I went through the normal immigration process to get a legal entry to the United States, which is something that you need to claim asylum based on the law, to be honest. And that's what the media is, trying to pick up right now. But that's the truth. You need a valid entry to the country to be able to request asylum.
Right.
So I got my valid entry, and then I filled my
Right.
case through the mail. So I get together everything, forms. They have a lot of forms you have to fill out. So you fill out all the forms, I get all the evidence, I translate all the documents I could, and it was like a very big package, and I just mail it
I
in.
can imagine. So wow, that's so. Uh, so you had a limited amount of time to do this for your application.
You have 1 year to
Ah, okay,
send your
okay.
application for asylum, after you enter the country.
So wow. Okay, so during that time, I imagine you were going through some financial hardship. I mean, you're in the U.S. You don't have
Yeah,
a work permit. Like, how did you approach? Like, how did you approach that situation? That's because that's scary, man. Like,
well,
you coming in here and you have
I
limited
mean,
resources. Like, and I have this amount for this month,
but
and
let me tell you something. I think it's scary even now because all these LA things going on have everyone jobless in COVID. I mean, especially in the film industry, I have many friends that are jobless for so long. People, struggling right now. Sometimes I feel like I'm back living in Caracas. It's like it's crazy, but it's like that
wow,
right now. But yeah, by then, I have some savings, right? And I just try to I have like maybe 4 months of rent and few savings to put food on the table. The immigration process after you file for asylum, you have to wait 150 days to file for a work permit. So during those 150 days, I just did pretty much nothing. I took obviously some jobs here and there,
hmm
that didn't pay much, but provide me some stuff, food, and everything I need by then.
sure,
So yeah, I slept for on an air mattress for 6 months maybe,
okay,
something like that, which was challenging. I grew up in a home in a household where I say, "Oh man, I want a queen bed," next
all
morning,
right,
and I will.
yeah,
Just,
yeah,
it's
that's a
like
big change.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a big change.
Wow. Okay. And then obviously finding jobs, like you said, it must have been a challenge. LA shifts between.
I did some weird jobs
Sure.
like moving
Sure.
Russian.
Okay.
They didn't speak English. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
speak
Right.
Russian. So weird.
Yeah. So that was my question
But
actually, because this happens often in LA. Like I know a lot of people can survive without English, but obviously you've learned the language and you've learned to like apply yourself with it. So how was that transition coming from a SPAC? Because you went to Mexico, which is cool because you can still speak Spanish, but now you're in the US and now you're working not just with
yeah,
English
well,
speakers, but with all sorts of different speakers.
as I say, I was, growing up, I was privileged. So I went to London. I lived in London for like a summer, attending English school. It was maybe my first time like studying English properly. I mean, I took English classes, obviously, in high school, and my mom put me on private school in Caracas.
Mm,
But I never took it seriously, to be honest with you, until I went to London. I was 19 years
hmm
old, 20, was 2010, I think so. No, yeah, 29, something like that, 2009. So I spent this summer in London, and I got like a probably like a B1, advancement
Hmm.
during that time.
Okay.
And then when I was in Mexico, I was working with this American company, right? So I went. They hired a English teacher for us that came into the office in the morning before we clock in to work. So she gave off like a tailored class for everyone. I used to be a translator for this company, so from English to Spanish. So they need us to be, as sharp as possible. And also, I was attending a private school, after hours because I wanted to prepare myself.
Sure.
I wanted to come here and do attend school, pursuing a master and a higher education. So I was preparing myself for that as well, and plus the job it was needed. So
Right.
even though when I got here, I reached out to this teacher I just told you to ask her for help to do the translations. So she helped me out with that, and she's from Phoenix, Arizona. So she was living in Guadalajara for many years. So she's a very good friend. So yeah, she helped me out with all that translations, and also keep giving me advice on my writing and help me out getting my resume together, stuff like that. Part of my decision coming to LA as well was, I was working with these people that they were established in the city. So I have some professional connection that maybe I can reach out for recommendation for, you know, jobs here and there, but didn't work as well as I thought it would work.
Right,
So,
right.
you know,
Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like in some ways you did have a little bit of an advantage, which I'm sure helped a lot, right? Like, you had some level of English already. You had some sort of experience in LA, having been here before. So I imagine that helped a lot. I mean, despite the fact that you were still like struggling living in like an air mattress and all that stuff, and having to leave everything, like, because you got established, you went from Venezuela and then you kind of build a life in Mexico, and then you kind of left two places that you were already used to. That's crazy.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's like to be heartbroken twice on purpose. Like when I was settled down in Mexico, it was like, I have my girlfriend, she's my wife right now, and it was like, I was single for 2 years, and it was like, oh my god, it was so hard to get a girlfriend here and friends and everything and a good job, and but at the same time I was sure I wanted to be here, and I have no regrets, to be honest. My journey has been very challenging these 6 years, I believe so. Sorry, but I'm proud of myself. I learned, how to be resilient. I learned to be humble. I learned to, you know, I developed the ability to swift from what I used to be to what I have to be now in order to, accomplish different stuff. So yeah, it's a long journey. It's a hard journey, but it's also very fulfilling for me at the same time.
no, it's it.
I mean, I done great things here. I work for the People's Cover magazine with Olivia Moon. If you told me 15 years ago, like, oh, don't worry, you will be in LA in 15 years working with a Hollywood actress doing a People's Magazine cover, I would say, like, yeah, get it, fuck out of here. But that happens. So it's like, it's been challenging, but I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm
it
happy.
sounds like you've had a good experience that's given you the opportunity to grow and even have some unexpected positive twists. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely. I mean, I've done jobs that I never thought I will be doing. I'm still doing Uber driving
Hmm.
sometimes here and there. So, I never thought to be a taxi driver. People say, like, oh, no, I work Uber. And well, he's just a taxi driver. And people never like to be a taxi driver, right? So it's like, you can call yourself Uber, but that's the truth. It's just to be a taxi driver. So that's challenging as well, psychologically, going through those days, being behind the wheel 60 hours a week, Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, like you said,
adaptation.
if you're used to a specific type of lifestyle, or you have a certain, like you said, a, a goal in mind about where you want your life to be, and then you find yourself doing things
Exactly.
to survive that you would never imagine. But at the same time, sometimes you have gratifying experiences, right? About about yourself and maybe personal growth in a way that you never imagined it was going to happen. Um, and I guess that's
Exactly. It's just like I always try to learn from any situation I am in. It's just like that. It's just winning. It's never losing. For me, at least, it's never losing. It's just winning all the time. A new skill.
sure. I mean, that's a pretty good mindset to have, And actually, that's where I want to take the conversation next. I was going to ask you, what was your experience like? Like, as far as, I guess what I mean by experience is like, what is, now that you're in LA, or you've been in LA for a while now, what's your impression of the country, the state? I mean, obviously, you don't live everywhere, right? You can only speak of where you live, right? But what's your impression, at least, of the US now to then, now that you're eating, like different types of foods that you probably weren't accustomed to, or just because you didn't have those types of folks living where you're from. Like, I imagine, what was your experience with that? And if you can share, like, maybe an interesting or funny, like, cultural misunderstanding, or something you've come across.
Well, it's funny when I say I'm from Venezuela. For many people, they hear Minnesota for some reason. So people say, "Oh yeah, you're from Minnesota," and it's like, "No, no, 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 Minnesota." Like, like for some reason, people always misunderstand that. But again, LA is this amazing place where you get to get involved with so many cultures at the same time. That for me has been enriching as well. I learned, I grew from these experiences I had, new flavors, new cultures. I mean, I believe so. I tried Korean food once in Venezuela 20 years ago, but nothing like the LA Korean barbecues, man. That's next level. Like that kind of stuff is
That's dangerous, man.
unbelievable. Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's always is again learning about a new culture, learning about a new system, a new health system, a new education system, a new way to apply for the degree that you want to, get in. So everything has been new, a lot of new things. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes it's, I may have, lost hope at some point. Like, it's not gonna happen. I'm done. I'm gonna be driving over for forever.
Hmm.
I reached that point. But this country have this, you know, different from everywhere else. Like you can just, you know, keep pushing. The government actually will have your back at some point. They, they will give you food stamp if you need
Right,
it. They will give you some cash assistance if you need. I never ask for any of those things because I have like trying to keep my record as clean as possible
right,
in the immigration mindset. But even though they say like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's not gonna affect you. But then again, you get sick, you go to the hospital, you you know take care with a medical or whatever. Venezuela, you go to a hospital right now, and you have to bring your own needles, you have to bring your own whatever to take care of yourself. So there is no resources. So and also you always have the opportunity to start over doing something new. And there are a lot of programs like pay to jobs. They train you on the job and you get paid and you learn and develop a new skill. Maybe it's not something that you were, you know, considered a few years ago, but will take you through a new career. So I think so. That doesn't happen in different places. In Venezuela, that doesn't happen. In Mexico, that doesn't happen. So it's like, you have opportunities. You have to be willing to go through different stuff. You have to be willing to be, humble yourself, put your ego aside, and you can succeed. That's the truth of this country.
sure. Sure. And, you mentioned something, and given the nature of where I want to take this podcast and how I want to, expose people to different experiences and different people, you mentioned something important, which is something that I really want to touch base with you and with different people, because there's all these misunderstandings, or at least there's this disinformation about immigrant habits, right? And even you said this country offers you the opportunity to give you food stamps and things like that. And you said, I want to avoid that because I don't want to have anything in my record, right? And I feel like a lot of times, at least from what I hear in this, the general media, when I hear perspectives of people that perhaps are not familiar or too familiar with immigrants, or they think they have a familiarity with immigrants, it's one of their things, right? They come and they just take, and that's all they want. They just want to take from the country, and it's been, at least my experience, that a lot of people try to avoid anything that has to do with the government just to put
Yeah,
their name out
I
there,
believe
right?
so.
Like, I don't think it's just
Yeah,
my
it's like
perspective. How is there?
you don't want, to be in front of a, immigration officer and he asking you, oh, what you did ask for money back in 2010? Were you, why were you working? You don't want to say like, oh yeah, I was jobless. I'm at my home just, waiting you to pay my bills. Yeah,
Right,
no
right.
immigrant wants that. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
truth.
yeah,
No
yeah,
one wants
yeah.
that. It's like you try to get away from those things, at least, when you can. Obviously, there are some situations where you have to go through those services. I mean, I remember shortly after I got here, I got you asked me for an experience, so here he goes. One of the lamps just broke, right? So I was picking up the glasses, and one of the glasses just stuck into my finger. So at first it was like, oh yeah, just a little cut, right? So I didn't take care of as much as I needed. I put a band aid, and that was it. 2 days later, the cut was closed. The wound, pretty much healed, but it was getting swollen. It was like inflammation, like crazy. So I was like, oh my god, I have something in there, and I didn't know what to do. It was like I have no insurance, I have no money to go and pay a bill. It's gonna be a few $1000s, right? They have to do some anesthesia and probably X-rays or whatever. So I was panicking about that because I start seeing my finger going like this, and I couldn't bend it or anything. So it was like, oh my god, something is happening. And I went to a small like community clinic, and they sent me to the USC LA County Hospital, which is a public hospital. And they asked me two questions, and they took me into emergency, and they provide me with some uh, antibiotics, and they did some x-ray, and the very next day I was with an appointment with the hand specialist, and they pretty much did the entire thing. They took care of me, and I didn't have money, and it didn't pay. They didn't charge me for anything. It was the only time I went through the public services, but it works.
Sure. Yeah.
And people wants to, a lot of immigrants wants to keep away from that as much as possible, but sometimes you have to. You
Right.
have no
Right.
options.
Right.
So
So,
yeah.
given that, we don't have much time left, but I wanted to ask you, just from your experience and just from your overall perspective, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about immigrants, at least in the United States, that you see, that you've heard in the past, or that you hear of now?
Well, not everyone is a criminal. Like all undocumented people is here just doing bad thing, yeah, and it's not necessarily like that. Many of them are creating businesses. Many of them are creating jobs for other immigrants. Um, that's a very bad misunderstanding, and also maybe because I live in LA, right, and this is one of those places in America where everything is more liberal, probably, right. So I never encountered one of these situations where I feel like I'm being, I don't know, uh, socially or racially profiled by people or by my background. So I don't know what other people's experiences are in different places that could be a little bit more racist whatsoever with immigrants, but I think so. LA in particular is a safe place for immigrants. So, you know, even though we are entering into a new administration with a lot of uncertainty for people, and it's going to be challenging times, but, we have to keep together.
And one last positive or any sort of message you have for any other immigrant out there that's just arrived to the US or is thinking about going to the US?
Well, if you are coming here, or if you are here already, learn English. As much as you can. Learn the culture. Learn, get yourself into the American life. So you embrace that, or whatever life, the Mexican life. I'm a Mexican music lover now, for example. So if you are here, if you are in Canada, if you are in United Kingdom, just embrace that culture. Try to involve and you know be part of that community as much as you can. Also, always look back to your people as well, right? It's not like you are here and you are not a Venezuelan anymore. I'm still having my tradition. I cook at home. I go to Venezuelan places whenever I can, restaurants or whatever. So yeah, that's part of the life. Work hard, file taxes. you know yeah.
And I think on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this. I know we tried this before, but I think this is far more
Yeah,
successful than last time. But
I
if
agree.
anybody look, I honestly would love to continue this conversation in the future. I know there's a lot of topics you want to cover about your country, and I would love to go over those with you. If anybody wants to reach out to you, where can they find you? I can post it. I can post it on so people can
Yeah,
reach out.
here on Instagram, my Instagram is Angel Matute, which is pretty much my name. You can see my photography work there. You can see some of my content creation, and yeah, pretty much all the same handle on Twitter, on X, and TikTok, and all the same handle. But yeah, looking forward. Thank you, Carlo, for having me. Happy to be part of this project. And yeah, looking forward for our next conversation.
Same for you. Honestly, thank you so much. I know you've been very patient, even though we went through technical problems in the past, and even in the beginning of this conversation,
That
it
happens to
happens.
us.
But we're making it happen now. We're moving forward with these projects, and I really hope I get a chance to have another conversation with you and to collaborate with you, and maybe in some of your projects. And I really wish you the best. And then also, I hope you're feeling better from your eye. I saw that you had posted the thing about the
Yeah,
fire and all of that
thank
stuff.
God.
So yeah. But anyway, Angel, thank you.
Exactly. You see,
Thank you so
I
much.
learned something new from that
Yeah,
day.
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's why I reached out. I'm like, I hope he's okay. Like you look like you were, you went around and
Like a
went through some
pirate.
like really kind of crazy looking places, and then later on you just post with your eye, and I was like, oh boy, I need to reach out to him and see how
Yeah,
he's doing.
it was challenging, but then I learned something new that day. Like, yeah, be more, careful the next time.
Yeah, no, but it's cool. Honestly, you brought you exposed people to some of the things that were really out there. You know that because I didn't really see anybody out where you were at, so I'm like, oh, that's nice. He's kind of one of the first people there to show things out in the way it's really going on. So that was very cool of you.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. But
Thank you,
again,
Carlos.
man, thank you so much. It was really great having this conversation with you, and I hope we can have this conversation again soon, man.
Thank
Much
you.
luck to you, brother, man. I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy.